So in the last recording, I was going into other people's dream spaces, or they're coming into mine, whichever one it was, right? So that begs the question, like, am I having dreams within my own consciousness, or do all humans share the same consciousness? So let's say all humans share the same consciousness. That means when we go into our dream space, it's not actually our dream space by itself. Maybe it's like separated into individual world, but there's other worlds next to our worlds as we're dreaming. We're just not aware of them because we're so focused in our world. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to think about it. Like in society, there's like mass thought, and that mass thought, everyone pretty much thinks the same thing. Like there are individuals which are creatives, but they're rare. Like true creatives. I'm not talking about people that create like stuff and say they're creators. I'm talking about true individual thinkers. Like true individual thinkers don't have a lot of friends. They don't interact with a lot of people because their minds are so different that they find it hard interacting with people because the things that they say and the concepts that they're saying are so vastly different that people can't understand what they're meaning. And most people are hive minds, even to this day, which is, if you think about it, it's kind of crazy. They have this hive mind of, if you don't think like we do, then you're different. And if you're too different, I'm scared of you because I don't know how to read you. And if I'm scared of you, then now you're my enemy. And that's kind of like the thought process that we have today within like the social constructs. So on a side note, as spiritual people, we kind of have to be wise like Jesus, because Jesus wasn't necessarily a Hebrew or a Jew if you think about it, because he never said that he was a Jew. He never said that he was Hebrew. He never said anything like that. People put things upon him, and he never denied it, but he never said it was true either. But if you think about the time that Jesus lived in, and him not being a self-proclaimed anything, he used the knowledge of the times in order to tell them about higher principles. So it's kind of like in today's age when you talk to three different people, one Christian, one Muslim, and one Buddhist, right? As a spiritual person, especially in today's age, we're no longer one thing. We understood we're starting to understand the multiplicities of the frequencies, and we're tapping into multiple frequencies at once, and we're putting them all together. And as we're putting them all together, it's splitting our consciousness up to certain type of frequencies to where we can understand the separate religions as separate entities, but also as one entity as well. So we can talk to a Muslim about Allah, and we can talk to a Buddhist about higher principles of life, and we could talk to a Christian about Jesus and about God, respectively to their religion's customs. Now, we may not be able to do it at high levels, but we're able to understand the value of respect according to what their religious code is. And then deeper and deeper we get into those religious sections, we're able to extract the overall spiritual principles from it, but still be able to talk about the concepts that are inside the spiritual lineage. That's the same thing Jesus did. All he did was take their spiritual lineage and talk about their spiritual lineage in a way that they never heard it before, which was foreign to them. But at the same time, Jesus was on the right path. You know what I'm saying? Well, on the physical, he was on the right path, but on the spiritual, he was on the left path. The reason why I say that is because Jesus didn't do what Jesus wanted to do. Jesus did what the Savior needed to be done. And the Savior needed things to get done because the Spirit commanded it. It's because Jesus, the Savior, and Christ are different beings into one. Just like there's a physical, emotional, and spiritual, that's what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about Jesus, the man. Then you have the Christ, which is the soul. Then you have the Savior, which is the spirit. You see what I'm saying? And if you look at it like that, Jesus' life is the alchemical marriage of the the human the human metaphysical I want to say anatomy, but the human metaphysical concoction. But anyways, so when you think about like social consciousness, right, and everyone having their own mind, that there it's proof within your dreams that even within your own mind, it's connected to a bigger mind. It's like it's inserted into an all mind, and the more dreams you have, and the more expensive your experiences become, it will prove itself to you to be true, like it's proven itself to me. So then you have to realize, okay, if everyone's individual, right, and have their own individual space, but other people can go into other people's spaces, the question is, at what degree is this negative and at what degree is this positive? Meaning, at what point do humans learn how to do this and weaponize it? Or at what point do humans learn to do this and save the world? You see what I'm saying? Like, which path are we going down? Are we going down a draconian type of thing, or a reptilian type of vibe when it comes to like spiritual spaces, or are we going down a more angelic or more savior like spaces to where everybody's uplifting each other? Or are we going in both places? Now, let's get into it. We're still talking about dreams, but now we're talking about dreams. We're talking about the dream space on like a higher frequency. So, like I said earlier, there's a mass consciousness, right? Within that mass consciousness, you have individual consciousness, right? And those individual consciousness are within their own worlds, right? So we have one mass consciousness of one country, but within that country you have states. Within those states you have provinces. Within those provinces you have neighborhoods. Within those neighborhoods you have houses, right? All those different distinctions from the big to the small are all worlds within worlds within worlds within worlds, right? Just like your own mind. You have what society says you should do, you have what you want to do, then you have your desires of what you want to do, and everything in between in those different degrees. I say that to say this: as above, so below. If the state all the way to the single house all has societal expectations on it, that means every single of those worlds building up from the house into society, to the nation, or the country, all those different worlds go back into the metaphysical consciousness of humans and how we see and how we can perceive it. So we're perceiving it as a mass consciousness, right? But that mass consciousness is just a country. Within the mass consciousness, you have concepts and ideas pertaining to that mass consciousness. Well, everyone within that mass consciousness knows those ideas and concepts, but inside those ideas and concepts, inside that mass consciousness, you have individual consciousnesses, right? Those individual consciousness know the mass consciousness and the ideas and concepts within it, but doesn't necessarily agree with them because they may have their own. You see what I'm saying? So if that's the case, right? Let's take it up a notch. If that's the case, that means our spiritual consciousness is its own nation, right? But that spiritual consciousness is just a part of our larger world of spiritual consciousness, and another spiritual consciousness that's separate from what our spiritual consciousness is another nation, and that nation has its own spiritual consciousness. And I'm not talking about worlds and nations. I'm really talking about universes. Like, let's say this whole universe is a spiritual consciousness, right? Well, just like there's another on the planet Earth, there's another country that thinks it's completely differently, has its own ideas and own values. Why do we think that this universe is only by itself? It doesn't make any sense. There's no proof of that in the world, that there's only one universe. There's no proof of that anywhere. If anything, there's proof that there's multiple universes. Just by the simple fact that your mother and father birthed you and your siblings, if you have any, and all your siblings have similar thought patterns, but none of y'all think alike. All of y'all have your own way of thinking, own way of doing things, own likes and own dislikes. Why do we think that if your mom and dad, which are two universes, come together and they birth more universes, but all those universes come from the same universe but are separate from and have their own concepts and ideas, why do we think that this universe is the only universe? Why do we think spirituality is just what spirituality is and there's no other spirituality? You see what I'm saying? Like, why do we think that whatever we think is what it is and there's nothing else outside of that? Why do we think that whatever is in this spiritual book, that's the only thing that it is and there's nothing else outside of that? Why do we think that? You see what I'm saying? Like, we're in a space in society that tells us what to do and how to think. But if you really think for yourself, nothing in this world tells us that everything is the only thing. Like, there is not just one God. There can't be. It's not possible for there to be one God. Because in the sense of being a value of one, that means there's many. Does that make sense? Because if you have the value of one, the value of one doesn't mean anything without the value of 2 or 3 or 4 or 0. The value of one doesn't mean anything. And then if you put it as the designation of one, like you're saying this is the designation, like this is the I'm labeling this one. Well, if you label something as something, it's a totality of all the things that it is. So if you label God as the totality of everything, that means everything is multiple. And all those multiplicities are one thing. I say all that to say, within our dream space, we're only able to see what we can see based on our vibrational level and our frequency. If we raise our frequency, yeah, we could have different experiences and vibrations, but it's not just to raise our frequency. We have to expand our frequency, not just try to get to this frequency and get to a higher frequency. We gotta keep the low frequency, and we have to evolve it and expand it into high frequency. Not go from low frequency to high frequency. No, keep the low frequency and expand the low frequency into the high frequency. So when you're in the high frequency, you can go into the low frequency. And then when you're in the low frequency, you can go back into the high frequency. You can travel in between. When you're able to travel in between the high frequency and low frequency of your own being, think about that. Whatever you're able to do within your being, you're also able to do within the being that you're in, which is this world. So if you're able to go in between the high versions of yourself and the low versions of yourself, that means you're able to go into the high parts of society and low parts of society based on the level of mastery you have within your own high and low self. Does that make sense? Like, everything is relatable. Everything is one thing. But all these one things are different things. But those different things are one thing. It's like there are many paths to God, but there's only one. And that one path is the universe that we're living in. But this universe isn't everything, because there's another universe that you're also living in that you're completely unaware of. And being in dream spaces, it leads you to that understanding that there is something more going on here, because I'm having dreams that I can't explain anymore. I'm having dreams that are interfering or prophesying in my life, and these things are coming true, and I don't have anywhere to turn to. There are things that are happening in my dreams that are speaking to me on such a high level that it's frightening to me, because it's not written down in books. It's not talked about by people. People aren't experiencing these things. Am I going crazy? Like, am I demonic? Am I worshiping the devil? Like, am I doing something wrong? And the answer is no. You're expanding your consciousness. And when you expand your consciousness past the social consciousness, you automatically separate yourself from that consciousness. And it's not like you separate yourself from it, but your ideas, your thoughts, your concepts, everything about you starts to change. And at first, you drift away from everybody because you're like, they're weird and they're different. They're too different. And I don't want to do that. I want to be by myself, which you need to do that. You need to go into the darkness, which is your light. You need to go into the darkness, which is your light, as a caterpillar goes into cocoon, so you can stabilize yourself within your own light, which is their darkness. So when you come back into society, at first it's gonna be combative because you have a different type of light on you now, and you have to be able to mold that light within yourself to be able to fit into society, or they're gonna keep attacking you, which is the saying of what Jesus was saying when he's like, don't be too good, don't be too bad. Like, you can't walk. He's like, on one hand they say don't be lukewarm, which is don't half-ass it. So be genuine with yourself, but at the same time, your genuine nature within yourself is always going to balance you, no matter if you walk the left path or the right path, because the genuine nature is what you choose. The authenticity of yourself is what you choose. So if you're authentic with yourself in the left path and you go after worldly gains, you're being true to who you are. And if your authentic self goes on to the right path and you go after spiritual gains, then you're doing what you need to be doing, right? But you also have to realize that the left path and the right path are the same path. They're just going in two different directions. And those two different directions all lead back to the same direction. You see what I'm saying? So the left path and the right path needs to be used interchangeably, which is what your authenticity is. Your authenticity of who you are is going to make you malleable to the left and right path. So you can go into this world and leave a mark, but not too much of a mark to where you cause a lot of attention to yourself, unless that's what you want, but enough mark to have a lineage and for them to be stabilized within the economy, for them to learn the ways of the world, but for them to also be able to understand the spiritual side of life, so they can pick up your path as well, to be able to walk the left and right path at the same time. Not because you're choosing God or you're choosing the devil. You're not choosing either, because you're understanding both of them are both parts of your nature, and you're not choosing one nature over the other. You're reconciling both of your natures. And ultimately, that's what the dream state is. The dream state is yourself talking to yourself, letting you know where you are in the astral realm or in the astral space. And I think I'm gonna do one more part talking about the astral and stuff like that.